Islamic eschatology describes the end times as a period of absolute, violent rupture, a complete shattering of all established foundations and earthly hierarchies. This printed copy of Majma al-Nurayn compiles eschatological prophecies, hiding a specific data point regarding the Mahdi's arrival. The text states that when he moves between Karbala and Najaf, he will execute 16,000 religious scholars. For centuries, Orthodox Islam has taught that the ulema, the scholars and jurists, are the trusted inheritors of the prophets, tasked with guarding the faith. The Majma al-Nurayn prophecy presents a violent inversion of this expected hierarchy. In this specific eschatological map, the internal clerical establishment appears as the primary obstacle to the messianic savior. To understand why a savior is prophesied to carry out these executions, we must reverse engineer the theological causality behind this event. The restorative logic found in these traditions demands the removal of the faith's perceived protectors to achieve absolute monotheism. Examining source texts like Mishkat al-Masabi and al-Kafi, we see how primary authors described these end-times jurists. The prophet explicitly calls the scholars of this era the most evil ever under the sky. The texts label them traitors and generators of religious strife. While their mosques are well-built and heavily populated, the texts declare these institutions are entirely void of true guidance. The exegesis attributed to Imam al-Askari provides a severe comparison, stating these corrupt scholars are more dangerous to weak believers than the army of Yazid. Rather than unifying the masses, their legal rulings fracture the Muslim nation into competing sects. The Hadith corpus identifies these trusted religious elite as the force leading the masses toward hellfire under the guise of piety. The mechanism triggering this eschatological conflict is an epistemological framework known as taqlid, or blind imitation. Mapping this system, divine law originates at the top, but must filter through a scholar node to reach the masses. If this central scholar is compromised by personal desire or ignorance, the entire network below receives a corrupted signal. Operating within this framework, the scholar makes the lawful unlawful and the unlawful lawful, altering the core of the religion. In Al-Futuhat al-Makkiyah, the Mahdi's specific opponents are the people of Ijtihad, the scholars who rely on this interpretive system. Their motive for fighting him is clear. The Mahdi's arrival abolishes the different sects, instantly destroying the cleric's monopoly on truth. Surah 9, verse 31 of the Quran states, "They have taken their scholars and monks as lords besides Allah." Imam al-Sadiq clarifies they didn't literally pray to scholars. Instead, taking them as lords meant blindly accepting their authority to dictate the lawful and forbidden. By deferring absolute legislative authority to a human intermediary, the masses assign divine status to men. The primary texts define this functional polytheism as the crime that necessitates the execution of the 16,000. The physical eradication at Karbala and Najaf aligns with a stratified metaphysical reality. Volume 8 of Bihar al-Anwar maps hell to these corrupt scholars. This cross-section shows a divine justice system calibrated to specific intellectual and ethical breaches. The fifth level of the fire is reserved for the scholar who exploits Judeo-Christian texts to inflate his own perceived knowledge and dominate discussions. The sixth level targets the pretender, the scholar who places himself forward to issue fatwas without true knowledge. These metaphysical punishments also address terrestrial acts, specifically those of scholars who align with political tyrants to consume worldly wealth. By operating in tandem with political regimes, these religious authorities provide the theological cover necessary for oppression to thrive. This precision in the divine justice system ensures a specific metaphysical retribution for every terrestrial act of legislative usurpation and political collusion. We can now return to the flowchart to finalize the theological causality. The root cause is the establishment of the taqlid system, forcing the masses to imitate human intermediaries. This results in legislative usurpation, where clerics seize the authority to declare what is lawful and forbidden. This leads to total epistemic corruption, dividing the religion through human desire. This causal chain connects the initial system of imitation directly to the final eschatological sanction. The Hadith tradition presents an eschatological narrative that is fundamentally an anti-clerical framework. True orthodoxy requires the removal of its own guardians. To accept the emergence of the Mahdi is to fundamentally reject the authority of the ulema.